So, how did everybody sleep last night? Good, good. Got our 7 hours in. Feeling good today?
It's always funny how you talk about some of the books we've read and how do you plan to implement some of the lessons learned. And with this book, it was like every day I was trying to do something different while reading the book, I reckon.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like I got stressed out the nights that I didn't sleep well. It's all of a sudden I was like, uh-oh, what's gonna happen?
Yeah, it brings me back to days of competing the night before a competition. Like I know how important sleep is on this day specifically. 2 hours usually maximum of sleep. It's like when that pressure's on, it's a lot more difficult. But before we deep dive into it, just a quick intro. Welcome back to the book club. Today we are reviewing Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. So very interesting, scary, thought-provoking read, but a really good read nonetheless, with a lot of takeaways mixed in with a lot of research. So I think it appeals to multiple groups. We'll also probably touch on some of the other maybe shorter resources that are out there if you are interested in the knowledge that we're going to be talking about, but aren't quite interested in a hefty read. There are some good podcasts, some YouTube videos, and things like that out there as well. So we can make sure to include those in the description. But yeah, excited to dive into this one. Nervous, but excited. So did everybody listen to the book on Audible, or did anybody read it as a book?
Audible.
It's a pretty long Audible read. I threw the podcast in there with Joe Rogan, which I thought was a good way of kind of summarizing the main points, but I think it also kind of like framed a lot of the points that they talk about in the book in like a very scary way without the research kind of backing it up. It's almost like it is like force you to believe something without necessarily having you fully understand it and being able to kind of delve into it a little bit deeper. But yeah, so let's dive on in. Did anybody listen to the podcast as well?
I'll go first, Max. How's that?
Pardon?
I'll go first.
Okay, you go first. Dive on in.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you said. I listened to the Rogan podcast probably on day 1 or 2 after we kind of decided we were going to read this, and it was obviously pretty hard hitting with some of the facts. And the book is long, and it is a lot of research. And I think that as good as it was, it actually at some point almost made it harder to read. Because it just felt like it was kind of like, okay, I get the point, and like we've demonstrated 1 or 2 studies. I probably don't need the 4th or 5th kind of example as well. I believe you at this point. Like I believe what you're saying. But I think the most ironic thing for me was like a lot of my Audible listening comes at night, and the narrator's voice was like super English and super dreamy. And so it was almost like this choice of like lullaby narrator to actually help you fall asleep while like reading the book as well, which I found super helpful at times. But this book for me, of all the books that I've ever read, I would put this one up there with like Atomic Habits, as like this book is probably going to have quite an impact, like a pronounced kind of impact on how I kind of apply to like myself and my kind of coaching clients, right? And I think that's like, yeah, we do a lot of work with gratitude and journaling and mindfulness, and that I think that stuff has really worked its way to the top. But the importance of sleep in regards to like its impact on everything else, regardless of how well you're doing all those other factors, is probably not something that I've really ever completely comprehended until this point. So for me, like I can very easily see this book becoming like recommended reading, like compulsory reading for like new clients. And I think that's one of those things, right, where it's like you don't know what you don't know, but once you do know it, you kind of have to apply it, right? So yeah, I've got a bunch of things listed down as like my favorite quotes or like my most pronounced moments. But yeah, that the all the research and also I think similar to Atomic Habits, when you read it, it was like every statement that they made was like, that's a profound statement. And it kind of makes it even harder to not just like read and process, but you're like actively trying to remember like every single line that's coming at you, because it is so useful. So in terms of like actual read, it was challenging, but in terms of the actual content, it was incredible. So
yeah. I feel like similarly to you, Ben, it was one of those things that really hit home why sleep is important. Like, I think we've heard that in so many different aspects. And like, the end of the day, like, I knew it, but I don't think I always was motivated to apply it. Kind of pre-COVID, I was an early morning gym goer. Like, I would go at I get up around 5 and I would stay up super late. And I always had it in my head that like, I had to go to the gym. That's what was going to get my progress. And like, I don't think I ever, like, this book was a good way, I think, for me to step back and take a look at some of the habits that I do and things that I prioritize over sleep. And just gave me some thoughts. And I tried to have as many concrete takeaways and actually like make changes to my behavior, so that it wasn't just a like, I read all this information about sleep and then kind of continued on as is. So I think it was quite impactful as well.
And I think you're right, Ben. I think it will be a must read soon, just because, I mean, I love sleep. So for me, I was like, yeah, duh. I was like, this is why my sleeping list is like 20 things long. It always gives me crap about doing like a million things before bed. But
just a bedtime routine starts at like lunch, and she's like, I've got to start my 8-hour wind down for like my 12 hours of sleep. 4 waking hours.
And now you get it. But I think like as kind of repetitive as things were kind of like honed in, like the 4 or 5, research behind each point, I think also solidifies it to go, okay, this is not just like a once-off study or whatever that says like, oh, here's the validity and here's like the multiple reasons why. And I think some people who are very maybe analytical brained or like science-based or whatever will need that. And so even though like there was point, I listened when I was running and I was just like, I get it. Like I was like, come on, bro, like next point. But I think for those who really need that reassurance, like, I mean, it just shows that sleep is paramount, full stop.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things too that's similar to, well, obviously, I think a little bit more complicated then, but drinking water. If you don't drink water and you've never really drank, an adequate amount of water, you think the way that you feel is just the way that you feel and the way that you perform, until you start drinking, enough water and you start to realize like, holy shit, this is how I've always been able to feel. I feel like sleep's the same way. A lot of us run on or have at one point in our lives run on, inadequate sleep, and we're fine. We get through our days, we get our stuff done, whatever it may be. We perform to what we think is, as good as we can. But then you start getting that 7 hours plus sleep consistently, and you're just like, holy shit, this is what I've been missing out on.
He says that too, right? He's like the hard thing is the more sleep deprived you are, like the less you realize that you're sleep deprived. So like you think you're doing fine on like 5 or 6 hours. And like we all have friends who like they're like, yeah, I only need 5 hours of sleep. And like reading this book and you're like, oh, you're not going to remember my name because you're going to have early onset of dementia at like 35 if you keep this up. It was interesting to read from like a personal perspective and like my own sleep, a coaching perspective in like things that he mentions that you do definitely see within like client population. And then to read it as a parent, right? And almost terrifyingly so as a parent, because I think there's one stat, and this is kind of towards the end, where he's like, only like less than 25% of kids aged 12 to 19 are getting an adequate amount of sleep. And a lot of the problems are manifesting and being diagnosed as ADHD, for which the treatment is like stimulation when they're already like sleep deprived. And then I think he backs up with something like a 65, and I'm pretty close with these numbers, but I don't think I'm spot on. 65% of like ADHD diagnoses are incorrect, and it's actually more an issue of sleep deprivation, which is kind of causing like irritation and acting out and that sort of stuff. So you can sort of see how like if you got a diagnosis of ADHD at 14 and you're put on like Ritalin or Adderall, right, which is like amphetamine based, and you're doing that for like 10 or 15 years. And again, like to kind of quote back all his references to like issues with mental health and stuff like that they see in the laboratory with like sleep deprivation, how much that is going to further someone down like the completely wrong path for a very extended period of time. So yeah, there was a few of those like those kind of moments like reading this book. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways for myself that I think a lot of probably clients and you guys probably the same is, even if you are getting that 6, 7, 8 hours, it might not be the right sleep. You know, you might not be going through your sleep cycles, you know, getting into your deep sleep. It might be that really light sleep. And so, I mean, I which I've kind of like spoken to clients about previously, but it just kind of really honed in, you know, the one stat about like people who take sleeping pills, you know, are like 5 times more likely to die or something like that, early onset things and to die sooner. And, you know, and but it's not the culture that we have. Like people go, oh, I'm not sleeping, so I'm going to take this. And then I get 8 hours and that's fine. And like really, you know, going back to being a Band-Aid effect, it's probably like making things worse instead of helping them get the right sleep. Does that make sense?
Calls them sedation pills, right? Because it's only sedating you. It's not actually helping you get to sleep. Yeah.
We talked about that too with like alcohol and like drugs like marijuana and stuff. And I know for myself, if I've been out drinking, I never get a good sleep. And that compounds itself with the fact that you're like dehydrated, not feeling well and all that kind of stuff. And it just I know like a lot of people in my family will do like a drink before bed kind of thing, and it just kind of hammered home that like, yes, you think that's like helping you fall asleep, but it's sedating you. It's not helping you get that deep sleep. And there's a lot of like, I think, misnomers within how we think about sleep, so it's interesting to kind of go through those as well.
I like how he suggests like that you're better off day drinking in the morning, because by the time you go to sleep, like you will have like removed the alcohol from your system. I'm like, oh, okay, lesson learned.
And then there was something too about dreams and like drinking alcohol too. And if I'm remembering it correctly, it was if you drink alcohol and then once the alcohol has left your system and then you sleep, you're more susceptible to having some like crazy dreams. I don't know if that would matter if you're sleeping after the alcohol or not, but I thought that was really interesting. Just like the connection that it has to your brain and what your body is doing is just like insane. And probably things not a lot of us really think about when we do end up drinking.
The dreams part was fascinating. Like the study where they wake people up when they're in REM sleep and get them to do like creative problem solving. And then like when you dream and everything's always so abstract, to find out that that's actually your brain rewiring in like different patterns and connections as it would if you're awake and your logical brain was kind of, your rational brain was at the helm. I was like, no shit. Because it's like, it is always like when you're having that really weird dream, there's a point of you that's like, what is going on? And at the same time, you're like, this is completely rational. Like everything completely makes sense in this dream, in this moment, right? Yeah, that was, nuts. Dreams are nuts.
I don't remember my dreams ever. And like, as I was reading through this book, I was like, uh-oh, what does this say about like my sleep?
Have you ever tried though having like a pad and pen or pencil like next to the bed, and as soon as you like wake up, you just immediately write down whatever it is that you're thinking about? Have you ever tried that?
I've never woken up thinking about anything.
Really?
Like never, ever. Like I never remembered a dream.
Wow.
I think I've been dreaming more since we've started reading this book.
Maybe that'll be my goal, is to see if I can get myself dreaming.
You've never experienced a dream. That's insane.
Yeah, right.
Let's all dive into Laura quickly. Back to the book.
I think what it is I just don't remember them, is my assumption. I'm a light sleeper, which also makes me worry that I'm not like getting into REM sleep, because my dog's crate is down in the kitchen and like I'm upstairs with the door closed, and like she'll roll over and I'll like wake up and hear her. So I certainly like, that was a takeaway for me, is like, how can I make my sleep deeper? So like blackout blinds, like things like that. Like I've been trying to like tweak my routine as I go to bed. I don't know if it's quite as good as yours, Jess, but.
Right. Do you track your sleep?
No, I don't track my sleep, which I feel like I should now.
Sure. even I think like something simple is like, occasionally I'll get clients, you can download an app where it'll like tell you how much you snore. It'll just like basically monitor the sound. So if you're moving around or rustling, I think those can all be like beginning signs of, maybe not being as relaxed and like calm and deep into your sleep as you'd want to be.
Mm-hmm.
The technology's like component towards the end of the book was pretty fascinating, and I'm not quite sure how long ago the book was written, but I think it was at least a couple of years. And he does say in the book, within 3 to 5 years, like we're gonna have wearable technologies like track sleep. It's like Whoop, right, and like Aura rings and stuff like that. So we're definitely like he's right on the money there. I think that the fascinating part about having like, I think they call it like the Internet of Things, where like everything in your house is kind of connected. And he talks about having it set up so that it can run algorithms based on you as a person and your like fluctuations in temperature and stuff like that, and your sleep cycle, and how it dims the lights as you walk in, as the evening pronounced, to like increase like your feeling of or increase the effect of the melatonin, and then like during the night, like affecting the thermostat to keep it nice and cool. It's like, that would just be like I can definitely see that happening. Like if you can come in and your fridge can order you items that you don't put back in the fridge because they're empty, like if we're at that level, surely like the next level of like lighting and connection is not too far away. And I think he said they're doing that now in the space station to help reduce like astronaut mistakes from fatigue. They're able to simulate proper like circadian day and night out in space. So those light bulbs cost 300 grand each or something. So he reckons they're not too far away. You'd do that, wouldn't you, Jess? You'd pay 300 grand for light bulbs and have one of them in each room of the house, so that it just like dims and brightens as you walk in and out.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we're really good at doing that anyways. Do you know, like we very rarely use like normal lighting. So we have salt lamps everywhere, and then we have like the low blue light bulbs. So like we're pretty good at it, but I would definitely pay just to have it. And we have kids, like you said, with all of the stuff you talked about with kids. I was like, I thought about you a lot. I was like, oh my God, Ben's gonna be losing his marbles because this is crazy. But I feel like it's like one I'll have to go back and like re-listen to, because I was just like, kind of made me tweak out a little bit. I was like, ooh, stressing. But
that's probably the one thing that like you lose with Audible, is like kind of that ability to like dog tag a page, or you know what I mean. I know you can bookmark in Audible, but I feel like I have a few books that we've read on Audible that like I've enjoyed so much that I'll order the actual book, the hard copy book, and then kind of look at it like a textbook and kind of highlight and dog tag and annotate. And I think this is definitely going to be one of those books. But yeah, I've been super paranoid about Matea. Like every time she goes for a nap and she like only gets like 25 minutes, I'm like, it's not enough. Like get her back down to sleep.
It made me wonder too about parents of newborn children. Obviously, their ability to get, sufficient sleep is severely diminished. And I don't know, that like, did that cause you any anxiety, Ben? Is it currently causing you any anxiety? Like how mentally do you kind of manage that?
Probably wrong parent to ask for the most part. No, I think the biggest kind of takeaway to me, and probably the easiest way to explain it with clients, is when he separates the difference between actual sleep time and sleep opportunity, right? And so like I was always a big one for being like getting into bed and like, oh, it's 10 o'clock, I've got to get up at 6, like at least I'll get 8 hours. And it's like, no, you've got an 8-hour sleep opportunity, but it's not like you go to bed instantly and you sleep soundly the whole way through, right? So if you're in bed for 8 hours, like getting your bare minimum 6.5 to 7 is obviously, the likelihood is much greater, right? So we sort of see that as the same with Matea. So like Matea's bedtime is kind of like 7:30, 8 o'clock. She generally sleeps for like 12 to 13 hours before she's up, but she will wake during the night. And the older she gets, the easier she is to settle. So I kind of feel that like for Kat and myself, it's like, yeah, if she wakes or if she kind of rumbles around, you do wake up, but once she settles, you go back to sleep quite quickly. So as long as we're kind of giving ourselves that same sort of 9.5 hours of sleep opportunity, we're going to get the kind of minimum required dose at least, and then usually a little bit more. So definitely, I guess it's more similar in the very beginning to Laura's dog, where like you are on high alert. Like it's hard to sleep. You kind of like, you want the baby to be quiet. And then as soon as they're quiet, you're like, oh shit, are they still breathing? Like you're like on high alert for like the first kind of 3 months. But definitely, even though the sleep is broken, like your sleep is broken anyway, right? As you sleep, you're kind of always coming out of a deep cycle and kind of back to sleep. You're just usually not aware of it. So yeah, I think that for us, it's been more about she's going to bed at this time, kind of try to finish up as quickly as possible. And then, you know, almost like jump into bed because like, oh, what else is there to do? Like, you know, and then, yeah, the more, the better she sleeps, like obviously sleep for a little bit longer, but just giving ourselves that sleep opportunity is kind of the way around it. I feel giving yourself the best chance to get as much sleep as you can.
I'm not a parent, but I'm just going to throw my 2 cents out there. I agree. Not yet anyways, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I think like you're absolutely right. I think though, sometimes like what I've seen with like clients or family is when the baby goes down, they want to have like this time to themselves or the time to spend together, or, you know, the me time, instead of going, okay, actually I'm in survival mode. I should really, you know, try and go to bed similar time as the child, or, you know, look after number one. It's like, I think it's hard to do because you have to like choose to be like, I really want to watch this episode of Netflix without a crying baby, but I should go to bed. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, sounds like you guys do it pretty well. I don't know, I'm not there, but sounds like it.
Like we could have definitely a huge tangent and kind of go that way. But parenting is like one of those super, super contentious issues where like, it's hard to say anything, even if you're talking about your own experience, for other people not to feel like you're challenging them or like you're basically saying that they're doing it wrong, right? We're in quite a unique position given that we do work from home and given the amount of support here, that like we're not yet at a point where we've had to put Matea into something like childcare because we both have to go back and work at an external site for 8 to 10 hour days. Right. So we've had the luxury of being able to set up our schedule so that one of us is always consulting and generally the other one is parenting. And the days that, you know, my mum can help or my sister can help or whatever, we can both get some work done. And so because of that, it's kind of been like this, like we co-sleep. So Matea's like in our room, in our bed, and it's kind of like, it's okay with us for the time being that like she'll kind of move on to that next level when she's ready. Right? Like that's kind of that attachment style parenting is what we're going with. And it's for us, like, and the challenges that we had with having a child, it's like, cool, like this is just part of something that we thought we were never probably going to experience. And this is just the stage that they're at the moment. And like, whatever, it's kind of like short-term pain, you know? So yeah, and that's just my take on it. And it's kind of what's working for us. But yeah, it would be very different if Kat only had, you know, 6 months maternity leave, and was kind of like having to put Matea into daycare and the issues that could then cause. But yeah, I mean, and again, going off tangent, there's a lot of the research out there with things like controlled crying and trying to like force kind of before they're ready, like babies to have a level of independence. It's kind of like, it's like authoritarian knowledge, but it's not actually supported by a lot of the research in terms of their mental development and stuff like that, and their stress levels and kind of how they're kind of functioning. So yeah, I guess for us, we've kind of got what works and we're sort of working around. Don't get me wrong, like it's definitely challenging. Like, you know, it's definitely Kat's life, especially, has taken a big hit socially, right? And there's also times when it's like, you miss your marital bed. Like, kind of, it's just like, wish Matea would just like hurry up, like move on with things. But again, it's like that sort of short term. It's like, cool, like we made the decision to have kids, and for us right now, this is what that looks like, and we'll kind of deal with it on the other end. But yeah, we do a lot of quality time where it's like whispering to each other, but you're still kind of deep breathing. And every morning when we're up, except for Thursday mornings, we're doing this, like we go and walk the dog and Matea's in the pram. And so she kind of babbles to herself and entertains herself. And it's really an hour where we can just kind of talk and connect. So you figure it out, I think is my point. Like you kind of get through it as best you can, but it's definitely challenging when you are getting woken up frequently during the night. You don't have a big sleep opportunity and you have to kind of go and cognitively fire at, you know, a full-time job, right? So it's definitely challenging. That answer your question?
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I want to ask you guys what your guys' thoughts are on the chronotypes.
This made me think of you as like, she's definitely a morning lark. And I think this one made me feel better that like, I'm not. And like, I don't know, I'm happy to get up and coach a 6 a.m. CrossFit class. I don't know how the people that come to my 6 a.m. CrossFit class like muster the power to do like a 1 RM back squat. Like I'm awake, but I am not firing at that kind of level at that early in the morning. And the chronotypes for me was like, I know you think it's bullshit, but I'm like, I feel like this has given me like a little bit of reprieve to be like, oh, okay, it's not just me. That and the teenage one where everyone thinks teenagers are lazy, but their circadian rhythm's just longer, so they actually should be sleeping in a little bit more.
Yeah, that's right. I think the chronotypes though are based on like adult characteristics. So mindful of that. But I also think, I mean, I think it's like 95% bullshit. Because I think there obviously would be some people who function, but I think everyone sees that and goes, oh yeah, I'm a night owl. And I'm like, you ain't, you just don't go to bed early enough or get up early enough. So I'm just nicely disagreeing with you that I think sometimes it's more of like a laziness / don't have good habits stuff. Not saying that's for you, but just in general.
But look at isn't it the last couple of hours of sleep are like your most like REM-based sleep? So if you're waking me up too early, you're costing me all my like creative discovery and.
Sure. That's what I'm saying. It's not like 100%. I'm just saying like, yeah, I've had clients who, for example, like, oh, I could never be a morning person. And they just like start going to bed an hour earlier and then like are now like 6 a.m. gym goers.
I don't think it's like you're born with a type. I feel like you can form yourself into a type. Maybe there's some habits that maybe you didn't have a whole lot of control over that have then kind of formed you into whichever type you fall into. But it's not like you don't have the ability to change what type you are. If that makes sense.
Work from home, I think, has helped with this. Like I'm a morning person or whatever you want to call it. Like I do my best work like 7:30 a.m. to like, 10 a.m. kind of thing. And like when I work, like I'm going to an office and like adding that in, like no one was in the office. I was staying late because everyone was like night owls, like kind of thing. So I think that's another advantage of working from home as well. And I wonder how the school system and the corporate environment will kind of change as like things like this become more talked about, but allowing people to kind of work the hours that they want to work to get their sleep, to get, whatever it is in their life done. Because that was a point too with the school system, how the times are so early to go with corporate jobs so parents can drop kids off, things like that. But it was just like so much more effective to have kids come in later. And I wonder if and when that will ever change.
Well, I feel like Dave Asprey and like Ben Greenfield, they purposefully homeschooled up until the point where their kids go to school later because they didn't want them to miss out on the amount of sleep and like that really important time of sleep.
Yeah. I feel like evolutionarily, it makes sense though, right? That there would be a percentage of the tribe that would be more alert earlier on and then would sleep earlier on, and a percentage of the tribe that would kind of stand guard starting later and finishing later, right? Like evolutionarily, like that makes sense to me that we might actually evolve like that as a protective like defense mechanism. But yeah, I think COVID maybe like I'm actually surprised we haven't yet seen more of the rise of like the freelancer, right? Like I'm surprised that more people aren't saying, cool, this like safe corporate job that I've always worked is actually not as safe as I've been led to believe, and therefore I'm going to do the same work but maybe as like a subcontractor or a freelancer, and therefore begin to dictate my own time. I very much feel like hourly pay is a very ineffective system, even for employers. So I feel like whatever the role is, we should have a system that you're kind of reimbursed for and rewarded for being productive, right? So if like, here's the amount of work that needs to get done by the end of the week. If you want to do 3 10-hour days and you get it done, as opposed to working 7 4-hour days, then like, have at it. So long as the work gets done, you're kind of getting paid on completion of like each part of that. So that if you decide you do want to, you know, be productive and do more work, I think you should get reimbursed for that too. Whereas the current system now is, oh, Jess, you're super efficient at your job and you're doing really well. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to give you more work because you're still here for the same amount of time, but we're going to actually continue to pay you the same as everyone else, right? So the current system is like, you're getting penalized for being like more productive, right? So I could definitely see, I mean, like, that's kind of essentially the 4 of us are at that point already, right? Like, it is very much your remuneration is tied into the amount of work that you're willing to do, and you have the freedom to do as many or as little hours as you want, right? At whatever time or day you want, from whatever location you want. And so I think like that's, you know, I don't know, Laura, like, do you find it like even harder to go, like, I couldn't imagine going back into an environment where someone was like, you have to be here in this chair at 9 a.m. and at 5 p.m. you're allowed to go home, right? And then like, we'll give you like 4 weeks every year where you don't have to come and do that. I'm like, fuck that. Like, that just sounds terrible.
I had a really hard time with the idea of like FaceTime at work. Everything I do is project based, but you still had to sit there 9 a.m., 5 p.m. A lot of my projects, it was like how long can you stay shows how productive you are. So people would stay to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 p.m. And to your point earlier, Jess, like, you want to wind down when you get home from the office, like, you know, you want to watch that Netflix show or whatever, and then it becomes your sleep that you compromise, and that becomes glorified too at the office. Like, everyone's like, I get by on 4 or 5 hours kind of thing. So it is a bit of like a toxic culture, and it creates, I think, not good habits. And yeah, I definitely don't plan to go back to the office. That's for sure.
And I think too, like, if you put somebody in, you know, a 4-hour shift who has prioritized their sleep, they're going to be a hell of a lot more productive in those 4 hours than someone who even maybe, you know, doesn't prioritize their sleep, works 8 hours, will get the same amount. So I think if you're prioritizing your employees' boundaries, they're in the end going to be more productive.
Oh yeah, the first hour, everyone's chugging coffee, like, just to function. It's definitely the opposite of productivity.
He mentions that too, right? Like, how many more mistakes you're making when you're sleep deprived or tired, and how much it's actually costing like corporate America. It's like $100 billion a year gets like from like sleep deprivation. But it was interesting that he mentioned some of those. I think it's that Italian company that's like got a remuneration system for employees that have 20 days of consecutive 7 hours of sleep or more. That they then get like $25 a day per day, up to 500 once they've kind of hit that 20, continuing on. So it's trying to kind of build that culture in that way. But his point to that was like, oh, instead of financial, offer them like more holiday time as like an incentive to continue sleeping, and reward rather than like total amount of hours, like consistent sleep, so that people who are suffering from conditions like insomnia aren't unfairly disadvantaged. But yeah, it's hard to imagine. Like, I think anyway, a lot of what we do is so governed by that like 9 to 5 kind of paradigm. Say hello to everyone.
Good morning.
And I also caught Kat like sneakily listening to the Matthew Walker episode of the Joe Rogan podcast as well. So I feel like she's like 1 month away from potentially joining the book club. I'll keep working on it. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how, like, if we do get to a point, and again, maybe COVID's been good for this, where people are like, cool, that was like the before COVID way, and that was like the old system. But if we're going to rebuild this, like, why don't we rebuild this properly in a way that like we have all this evidence and all this research to suggest would be better for our homeland balance, for our productivity, for our like general quality of life, right? For our health, ultimately, right? Yeah. So we'll see what happens. But as far as I know, like, there's no one actually really campaigning for it I guess, which is kind of disappointing too. It's like almost like oh, it's too big now to change. But I think what will end up happening is if you big businesses start to realize how much they're losing or how much they could be improved, as soon as like it makes financial sense to the right people, it'll be like a change that we actually don't have a choice of, right? I think even that with things like going back into the office, like if you've managed to get through the last 2 years and had, you know, growth or at least the same kind of level of productivity, why incur rent as an expense for office space if your workforce can just do just as well, you know, in their own space? Or at least like down to, you know, you're only allowed to have 25% capacity in workplace at the moment. Why not keep that at 25%, get somewhere that's a quarter of the size of where you are now for a quarter of the rent, and just use that space for like, oh, you have to have a team meeting for that particular day or whatever else, then you can come in on this day and use that space where you need to, right? I can totally see that happening. So maybe we are actually stepping more into that direction, step by step.
I hope so. I feel like they're all, like, since working from home, all those changes and all the abilities to kind of work to what works best for you have been productive for most people. Like, I have team members that work a little bit later in the day. I work a little bit earlier. I work with different time zones. So like being able to take a break midday, like they're all things that I think allow you to do more, whether it's sleep more, you know, your own personal stuff, exercise, whatever. And I think all those things can only add to your job and make you better, more productive at the end of the day.
The John Hopkins University part was terrifying, with like the percentage of mistakes in diagnosis and stuff like that that doctors are making because they're forced to work these like extraordinarily long shifts as like part of the culture. And then ironically, how much when they actually finally do get to leave hospital, their chances of being in a car accident and ending up as a patient back in the OR are like 300 or 400% more than they were at the start of the shift. And it actually all stems from a guy who created the program, who was a coke addict. Like, so he was like renowned for not sleeping 30 hours and showing no signs of fatigue, but occasionally had to remove himself from the surgery, or like would have shaky hands, which he blamed on like a nicotine addiction. Like, have we not like that was 1880? Like, surely we've like gotten past that in the medical profession. Like, come on, guys. Like, you guys are supposed to be leading the charge here. But yeah, when you read the book, you understand like you know, when you see those world's grossest like medical accidents, and it's like this person has an X-ray and it's like their leg, and there's like an instrument, a surgical instrument, like still inside their leg, and you're like, how the fuck does that happen? And it's like, well, probably doctor hasn't slept for 35 hours. They still feel like they're okay to conduct surgery, and then just like leave a clamp in the middle of that person's quad. Like, incredible.
I do that with car accidents in the morning on the way to work. Like, if I see a car accident, I always wonder, like, were you tired?
Yeah. And the answer is yes, right? For most people, like if the greater majority of people are getting just their 6 hours, because it was, I think he said 3 consecutive nights of less than 6 hours, you're at the same like cognitive responsiveness and function as if you've been awake for 30 hours nonstop. So it really doesn't take much. And it was interesting as well. He talks about, well, how much of an emphasis here, especially in Oz, there is on like drink driving, right? But he's like, with drink driving, like, yeah, you have accidents because your response is delayed, but when you're asleep at the wheel, like there's no response. You're not hitting the brakes at all, you know? But yeah, how would you target and enforce sleep? Imagine you got pulled over by the cops and they gave you like a cognitive ability test, like a problem solving test, to prove that you were like not fatigued. You had to prove a level of fatigue.
Well, and I think Australia is like, what I was really surprised when I came here, Australia is really good at like, people probably don't do it, but there's like signs, you know, along like the highways and the freeways that are always like, tired, take a nap. Like every like couple Ks, there's a lot of emphasis around it, where I like had never seen that back home in the US or anything. So, and I don't know if people listen, but they had stops where you could go and get coffee and tea. Again, it's a Band-Aid, but it was like, pull over, here's some food, like kind of trying to mitigate it, which is good, I guess.
Yeah, they have that on the highways here too.
All right.
I think
just America. It's all good.
Yeah. Too many cars on the road anyway.
Go ahead.
Have any of you guys ever experienced a micro sleep behind the wheel of a car?
No, I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of.
It's or even like, have you ever arrived somewhere and be like, I can't really remember the 15-minute like drive. Like I'm just on you're on autopilot the whole, like it's a drive that you do all the time, and you kind of get home like, I don't even remember. I couldn't even tell you which way I went.
Yeah.
I find that more with walking. I guess I walked like to and from work, but there were some days where I'd get to the office and I'm just kind of like, how did I get here? Like, what happened?
The only time I remember that happening is when I would be in university lectures. I'd be like, have my eyes open and watching the professor and be like, nothing. In the one too.
I would say now, like after that, if I went back to university, like there is no way I'd be like selecting like those 8:30, 9 a.m. lectures. I'd be like opting for the stuff later in the day for sure. So I guess like the lesson there is like, start giving this book as a recommendation to like those young adults that you are working with and their parents, right? Because ultimately, like I feel like kids definitely probably more armed with more knowledge now, but a little more restricted in their ability to actually apply it on a like scale like that. But yeah, it definitely was like a lot of moments where I was like, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. So yeah. And speaking of resources, Jess and I did actually do a podcast on how to fix it. So if anyone's at this point.
Wasn't there 2 of them?
The first one, we've done 2 episodes, but the first one was more like an episode on Jess, and then the second one was an episode on sleep. Yeah.
I love talking about sleep. It's great.
Well, I wish we had time to go through your entire evening routine.
Oh, nice.
You don't
I don't think you have that much space on your computer to download the video.
What's the number one thing that's made a difference in your sleep, Jess?
Can I say 2 things? So eating dinner earlier, so away from going to bed, and then like having a good sleeping environment. So cool, dark, and cold. Like we have blackout curtains. We almost always sleep with the aircon on or at a certain temperature. And
what is that?
Yeah, and moving the dog up to bed, which is
what is that temperature? What is that temperature?
I think it's like 67. No, I don't know what that is in Celsius. 67, 68?
I think that's similar to what we have. That was one thing.
Turning
the thermostat down to like 17.5.
Oh, I'm so guilty of turning it. So like I go to a hotel room and I'm like 75, 76. Like I just like bake myself.
Oh, I'm the opposite. We had a heat wave here and it was impossible to sleep. It's impossible.
Yeah, so those are the 2 things I think if everyone just like was a bit more aware of their environment and their sleep like habits and rituals. And then I think one of the biggest things after I read another book, I can't remember, but it was basically about the timing of everything we do. And so it was like the biggest thing is like if you're eating too close to bedtime, your body's obviously like trying to break down your food instead of like doing all the things it needs to go to sleep. And again, like masking, then you might be going to sleep, but not kind of doing what you should be doing while you're sleeping. So
that's an interesting one. My favorite quote from the book was when food is scarce, sleep is scarce. And it's interesting that's kind of one of the things that you found the most beneficial, which I guess if you're eating an appropriate amount during the day, it makes sense. But yeah, we see that a lot where people who are on heavily restrictive diets are like really struggling to get good quality sleep and like stay asleep. And you would think, oh, they've got less energy, they should be more tired. But it's like evolutionarily, the brain is like keeping you awake so you have more time to go foraging for more calories, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it would make it a stress response. If you are starving, your body's firing up cortisol and adrenaline to keep you awake and going. Yeah. But if you are satiated and nourished and fed to the right amount, your body maybe doesn't do that as like it doesn't need to.
Doesn't need to, yeah. The other interesting point was that we all have that mid-afternoon like lull in terms of like our neurology. Like I always thought that was like people going too long without like eating through the day or like having a huge lunch and then kind of crashing on like the other side of the insulin spike. And he does say that it can be mitigated through diet, but that it like still occurs. And so if you look at a lot of the European cultures, it's right where they take their siesta, and their quality of life and like life expectancy is much greater than we do tend to see in like the Americas and you know, the West. So yeah, maybe as part of this, like choose your own hours and working from home, like plug that nap in at like 2:30, 3 o'clock, take advantage of the lull, right?
Yeah.
What was the evolutionary explanation behind that again?
I can't remember, but it was interesting when he was talking periodically through history how different cultures have slept. Like there was a time when you would go to bed for like 4 hours, wake up, socialize, have something to eat, you up for 3 hours, and then you'd go to bed for like another period of time. And he thought that was more of a fashion statement than any kind of like neurology. But I can't remember Mags off the top of my head.
I know it's bothering me.
I'll have to get someone to read the book from the beginning and let us know. So if you're listening to this and then deciding to read the book, when you get to that point, if you comment below.
Well, I think I mean, you can teach yourself to nap. You know, I know people have done things like the caffeine nap where you like, well, I don't know any research behind it. I just know like, I think Tim Ferriss and stuff are like taking a shot of coffee or and then going to bed for 20 minutes and then like waking up. Like, so I think you can, I mean, we're adaptable creatures, right? So you can teach yourself the espresso nap or maybe a normal nap. But I think it's like, I guess at the end of the day, consistency is going to be the biggest factor, probably all of that. Like you can teach yourself to be hungry at certain times or detox at certain times. Like why shouldn't it be the same with napping, you know?
So as you're awake, your adenosine levels increase, which is like your sleep pressure, right? And the receptors in the brain that they bind to are the same ones that caffeine binds to. So if you're napping, you kind of remove the level of adenosine, and then the caffeine then binds the same receptors, so it then blocks further adenosine building more sleep pressure. Which is also why if you have caffeine late at night, it's hard to get to sleep because you've literally blocked that sleep pressure from mounting and building, but also why people tend to crash off caffeine as well.
True that.
There you go. I remember that one. The melatonin one was interesting too, where he sort of talks about people thinking melatonin is more of like a sounding alarm for your body to start to get ready for sleep than it is like actual cause of onset of sleep. And so as such, people taking melatonin at night, unless they're in that older population, it's not actually as helpful as we think. And he really only recommends it for older population who have trouble initiating that wind down, because as we get older, our melatonin production drops. Or also if you're like jet lagged and you've changed time zones, it's easier to start the bells ringing a couple of hours differently to what they would be normally ringing. So
I had really good luck using melatonin. I was flying back and forth from California, so the 3-hour time zone weekly for work for a few months, and it's really rough on your sleep, but if you take melatonin like correctly, it makes a huge difference.
And I think for potentially shift working as well, if you need to be consistently resetting that sleep cycle, I like how he said too something about how there are people, and I have been that person as well, who thinks that melatonin can kind of act as like a sleep aid consistently. He's like, that's not true at all. But if it's working, if the placebo effect is working, then keep at it.
And melatonin is obviously very different to, like we said before, like sleep aids, right? Which are more so just like sedation aids and not actually helping you sleep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Unfortunately, I have a point. I got to jump out and jump into another call. But this book, like we could almost, I reckon, do like 15 hours of talk for 15 hours of reading. Yeah, fascinating stuff. But for sure, like definitely something that I'm going to be like pushing on clients. Like I used to always think it was like sleep, nutrition, exercise. Like, yep, we got to get all these 3 right. But it very much is apparent now that it's like, if you are not sleeping, like what you're actually able to achieve with the other 2 is so limited that it's almost like we need to fix that before really we fix anything else. So
I'd love to do a chat on like sleep and nutrition specifically, maybe a coach's chat on that.
Do it.
Lovely.
Yeah. So do that as a follow-up. I also have to run to an appointment, but this has been a pleasure as always. look out for
Always, team.
next month's book announcement.
It's done.
Oh, we'll look for the
Yeah. Right.
active
With Brene Brown.
right.
Yeah. Your recommendation, Eggs.
I know. I didn't know it was announced yet.
Yeah. Gotta stay up to date with all the haps in the MTMM Book Club Facebook group.
Yeah. All right. We'll look forward to seeing you all next month as we recap another Brene Brown piece of work.
Daring Greatly.
Woo.
Looking forward to it.
Not daring greatly.
No, I thought it was Rising Strong.
Oh, is it Rising Strong? Rising Strong.
I was like, oh no.
All right, let's all go get some sleep.
Yeah. A little tired here in the Southern Hemisphere. I'm not a morning person like Jess is.
Yeah.
I've been up for like 4 hours, you know?
Getting ready to wind down, Jess.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
All right, bye, team.
Bye, guys.
Sleep well.
See ya.
Reading.